Hello, little dreamers. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a very chubby, orange cat named Pilo. He was fluffy, funny, and loved to nap in the sun. But more than anything, Pilo had a best friend, a playful dog named Max. Together, they shared adventures, laughter, and love. But one day, something happened that changed Pilo's world forever. This story is about love, about loss, and about how friendship can live in our hearts even when goodbyes are hard. So, snuggle under your blanket, close your eyes, and let me take you on this gentle journey of Pilo and his best friend, Max. Once upon a time, in a small sunny neighborhood, there lived a chubby orange cat named Pilo. Pilo was not just any cat, he was the type of cat who waddled rather than walked, his belly swaying side to side like a plump little pumpkin. His fur was fluffy, his eyes a sparkling amber, and he had a habit of flopping onto the floor dramatically whenever he wanted attention. Everyone in the neighborhood adored him, because no matter how grumpy he pretended to be, Pilo was undeniably adorable. But Pilo wasn't alone. Living in the same house was a dog named Max. Now, Max was the opposite of Pilo in every possible way. He was lean, fast, and full of energy. He loved running around the yard, chasing butterflies, and barking happily whenever the mail truck came by. Max's ears perked up at the smallest sound, and his tail wagged like a metronome, never stopping. At first glance, many people thought, how could a lazy, round cat and a hyper, playful dog ever get along? But the truth was, Pilo and Max were the very best of friends. Their friendship began one warm spring morning. Pilo had been lounging lazily on the porch, his round body soaking up the sun like a big orange cushion. He was purring, eyes half closed, already drifting into a nap, when suddenly, bang! A tennis ball bounced right onto the porch and rolled to Pilo's paws. His eyes snapped open, his tail flicked, and he blinked in confusion. Then came Max. With a joyful bark, he leapt up the porch steps, tongue hanging out, paws tapping like little drums on the wooden boards. He skidded to a stop right in front of Pilo, panting happily. "Hey!" Max barked, eyes wide. "That's my ball." Pilo tilted his head, looked down at the ball, then back up at Max. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with the slowest, most dramatic motion, he lifted one fat paw and gently tapped the ball. The ball rolled back toward Max. Max's tail wagged furiously. "You played. You actually played with me." Pilo yawned, rolled onto his back, and muttered in his slow, lazy cat way, "I suppose I did." From that moment, something clicked. Every day after that, Max would come to Pilo with his toys. Sometimes it was a tennis ball, sometimes a squeaky bone, and once even a stick longer than himself. Most of the time, Pilo would just blink at him, unimpressed. But then, just when Max was about to give up, Pilo would give the toy a tiny swat with his paw. That was enough to make Max explode with joy. And slowly, Pilo began to enjoy it too. Their days became full of small adventures. Max would run across the yard, barking happily, while Pilo waddled behind at his own pace, complaining under his breath about having to exercise. When Max chased butterflies, Pilo tried too, but usually ended up tumbling over his own paws, landing in the grass with his belly up. Max would stop, tilt his head, and then burst out in a doggy laugh before helping his clumsy friend back up. At mealtimes, Max gobbled his food in seconds, while Pilo ate like a king, slow and deliberate. Sometimes, when he was full, Pilo would push a little piece of fish toward Max. "Here," he would say. "For you." Max never forgot those little acts of kindness. At night, after a long day of play, they curled up together on the porch. Pilo's purrs mixed with Max's soft breathing, and under the moonlight, they looked like brothers, different in every way but bound by something deeper than anyone could explain. There was one night in particular that showed just how strong their bond had become. A summer storm rolled in, with thunder shaking the sky and lightning flashing across the yard. Max, usually so brave, tucked his tail between his legs and whimpered. He hated thunder. Pilo, on the other hand, stretched lazily, eyes glowing in the dark. He shuffled over to Max, pressed his soft, chubby body against him, and began to purr. The steady hum of Pilo's purr soothed Max's trembling. Slowly, his ears stopped twitching, his tail relaxed, and he laid his head gently on Pilo's belly. "See?" Pilo whispered softly. "The storm will pass." And with Pilo by his side, Max finally closed his eyes, drifting into sleep even as the thunder rumbled above. From that night on, there was no doubt, Pilo and Max were more than just cat and dog. They were family. They were best friends. They were two souls that had found each other in the most unexpected way. And though their personalities were as different as night and day, they belonged together. Sparkles. And so, Pilo and Max's story began with sunshine, laughter, and a friendship strong enough to light up even the darkest nights. The days rolled by like golden beads on a string, each one shining with laughter, warmth, and the quiet magic of friendship. For Pilo and Max, life together was a little world of its own, a world filled with small adventures, silly mistakes, and tender moments that stitched their bond tighter each day. Every morning began the same way. The sun would peek through the curtains, casting gentle rays across the living room floor. Pilo, of course, preferred to keep sleeping, his round body curled into a perfect orange loaf on the couch. His soft snores filled the room, sounding suspiciously like the hum of a tiny motorboat. Max, on the other hand, was already awake, tail wagging furiously, paws tapping the floor like he was trying to play an invisible drum. "Come on, Pilo. It's morning. It's a brand new day." Max barked, bounding toward the couch. Without opening his eyes, Pilo let out a dramatic sigh. Brand new day, same old nonsense. But Max wouldn't let him rest. With a playful leap, he landed right beside the cat, causing the couch to bounce slightly. Pilo's eyes shot open as he grumbled, "Max, my beauty, sleep." Max only grinned his wide doggy grin. "Wake up, buddy. We've got butterflies to chase, grass to roll in, and maybe, just maybe, a squirrel to spot." Pilo gave him a long, unimpressed stare. Then, slowly, he rolled onto his back, paws in the air, as if declaring to the universe, "This is not how civilized creatures start their mornings." But eventually, with Max tugging gently at his tail, Pilo slid off the couch and waddled toward the door. And so their day began. Outside, Max became a streak of energy, zooming across the yard with ears flapping like little flags. Pilo, of course, followed at his own pace. He took pride in walking slowly, pausing every few steps as though the grass beneath his paws was too luxurious to rush over. One morning, Max barked excitedly. "Look, Pilo! A butterfly!" The bright creature fluttered lazily above the garden, its wings catching the sunlight like stained glass. Max bounded after it, leaping into the air, missing by inches. Pilo watched with narrowed eyes. Humph, amateur. He crouched low, his fluffy tail twitching, his body wiggling back and forth like an orange jelly. Then, pounce. Except, instead of catching the butterfly, Pilo landed face first into a bush. Max froze for a moment, then burst out in loud, joyful barks that sounded suspiciously like laughter. He ran to his friend, wagging his tail. Pilo, are you okay? With a leaf sticking out of his ear and a flower petal balanced on his nose, Pilo emerged slowly from the bush. Of course I'm okay, he said with all the dignity he could muster. I meant to do that. Max couldn't stop laughing. Even Pilo, after a moment, began to chuckle too. And just like that, another memory was added to their book of silly adventures. Not every moment was wild. Sometimes, the two friends simply sat together, watching the world go by. On lazy afternoons, Pilo would sprawl across the porch like a fuzzy orange rug, while Max laid beside him with his chin resting on his paws. Birds chirped in the trees, the wind carried the scent of flowers, and the two of them simply existed. Do you ever wonder what's out there? Max asked once, staring at the horizon. Pilo yawned. Out where? Out beyond the fence. Beyond the street. Beyond everything we see. Pilo blinked slowly, his belly rising and falling. Probably more places to nap. Max rolled his eyes with a smile. You'd say that. And yet, even in their differences, there was comfort. Max dreamed of adventure, while Pilo dreamed of long naps in the sun. But they always dreamed side by side. Even mealtimes were filled with laughter. Max devoured his food in seconds, then sat patiently, eyes wide, waiting to see if Pilo would share. Pilo, ever the slow eater, took his time. Bite by bite. Chew by chew. Sometimes, just to tease, he'd look at Max with half-lidded eyes and say, Patience, my dear dog. Fine dining requires grace. Max groaned dramatically. But I'm starving. And yet, every single time, Pilo would push a small piece toward Max. Here. For you. Because you waited. Max wagged his tail so hard it thumped against the floor like a drumbeat. At night, after the sun slipped below the horizon and the fireflies began their dance, Pilo and Max curled up together. The world grew quiet, the stars shimmered overhead, and the two friends found comfort in each other's warmth. Sometimes Max dreamed, his paws twitching as though he were running through fields. Pilo would watch him with sleepy eyes, a small smile tugging at his whiskers. Don't worry, Pilo would whisper softly. Wherever you run, I'll be right here. And so the nights passed peacefully, filled with dreams, purrs, and the soft rhythm of friendship. Sparkles, little did they know, these joyful days were treasures, memories that would one day shine like lanterns in the dark. It was an ordinary morning, the kind of morning that felt just like any other. The sky was painted in shades of pale blue, the air smelled of fresh grass, and the gentle hum of summer filled the neighborhood. For Pilo and Max, it began the same way it always did, with laughter, play, and the comfort of being together. Max bounded around the yard, his tail wagging like a flag, while Pilo sat on the porch, squinting at him with sleepy eyes. Too much energy for this early hour, Pilo muttered, flicking his tail. Max laughed, his tongue lolling out. Come on, Pilo. Just one race. One tiny race to the gate and back. Please? Pilo sighed deeply, stretching his round belly out before rolling to his paws. Fine. But if I collapse halfway, it's your fault. With that, the two friends lined up. Max crouched low, muscles coiled like springs. Pilo simply stood there, looking more like a fluffy pumpkin than a racer. Ready, set, go. Max shot forward like lightning, his paws kicking up little clouds of dust. Pilo waddled behind, giving it his best, though it was more of a determined shuffle than a run. By the time Max reached the gate, he was spinning in circles, barking with joy. You did great, Pilo, he cheered. Almost made it faster this time. Pilo flopped onto the grass, panting dramatically. I told you. I am not built for speed. I am built for naps. Max laughed, nudging him with his nose. And yet, you still tried. That's why you're my best friend. The words warmed Pilo's heart. He didn't admit it out loud, but moments like these made him secretly glad he had a friend like Max. Later that day, the two wandered near the street at the edge of the yard. It wasn't unusual. Max liked to sit by the fence and watch the world go by, cars passing, children riding bikes, neighbors walking their dogs. Pilo sat beside him, his eyes half closed as he enjoyed the warmth of the sun. Look at that! Max barked suddenly. Across the road, a stray ball rolled into the street, bright and bouncy. Before Pilo could say a word, Max leapt up, tail wagging. I'll get it! Pilo's eyes widened. Max, wait! It all happened so quickly. Max dashed toward the ball, his paws flying across the pavement. But just as he reached it, a car turned the corner. The tires screeched, the world seemed to spin, and for a moment, everything froze. Pilo's heart stopped. There was a loud thud. The ball bounced harmlessly away. But Max didn't move. The world grew quiet. Too quiet. Pilo stared, his eyes wide, his breath caught in his throat. He wanted to believe it wasn't real, that Max would jump up, bark happily, and trot back with the ball. But Max lay still, the wag of his tail gone, the sparkle in his eyes fading like the last light of day. Pilo's paws trembled as he shuffled forward, each step heavier than the last. He nudged Max gently with his nose. Max, come on. Get up. You always get up. There was no answer. He nudged again, harder this time, his voice cracking. This isn't funny, Max. You're supposed to tease me, laugh at me, drag me into your silly games. You can't just... His voice trailed off, breaking into silence. The sound of the wind filled the air, carrying away the laughter that once lived in that yard. That night, the house was darker than ever before. Pilo sat alone on the porch, staring at the spot where they used to curl up together. The air felt colder, the stars dimmer. He closed his eyes, pressing his chubby body against the wooden boards as though trying to find the warmth that was no longer there. His purrs, once steady and comforting, faltered into soft, broken hums. Good night, Max, he whispered into the empty night. I'll wait for you, even if you don't come back. Sparkles, and just like that, Pilo's world changed forever. The laughter that filled his days was replaced by silence, and the light of his best friend faded into memory. The days after Max's accident felt like a dream Pilo couldn't wake from. The house, once alive with the sounds of playful paws and cheerful barks, had fallen into silence. The morning sun still slipped through the curtains, but it no longer felt warm. The yard was still green and full of butterflies, but no one chased them anymore. And on the porch, where two friends once curled up together, only one small, round cat remained. Pilo waited. The first morning, he sat by the door, expecting Max to bounce in with his usual energy, tongue lolling, tail wagging. Every sound outside made Pilo's ears perk up, but it was never Max. By noon, he grew restless. He padded through the house, nose pressed to every corner, sniffing for the familiar scent of his friend. The couch, the food bowls, the yard, everything still smelled of Max, but he wasn't there. That night, Pilo curled up on the porch alone. He kept a small space open beside him, as if Max might slip in at any moment. The crickets sang, the stars blinked, but Pilo's purrs were quiet and broken. On the second day, Pilo wandered to the fence where they had sat together so many times. He remembered Max's words, "Do you ever wonder what's out there?" Pilo blinked, his amber eyes cloudy with sadness. "Out there is nothing without you," he whispered. He stayed at the fence for hours, waiting for paws to come running back. Waiting for a bark, a laugh, anything. But the world on the other side stayed still. When evening came, he trudged back home, his round body heavier than ever. He climbed onto the couch, pressing his face into the blanket that still carried Max's scent. And for the first time in his life, Pilo cried, not loudly, not like humans do, but with soft, aching meows that echoed through the quiet house. By the third day, Pilo began to search. He searched under the bed where Max sometimes hid his toys. He searched the kitchen, the garden, even the old shed at the corner of the yard. At one point, he dragged out Max's squeaky bone toy, nudging it gently with his nose. The toy squeaked, a sound once followed by laughter, but now it only made the silence louder. Pilo pawed at it once, then curled up beside it, pressing his face against the worn rubber. "Come back, Max," he whispered. "I'll even race you again, if you just come back." But of course, the toy stayed silent. At night, Pilo dreamed. In his dreams, Max was always there, running through endless fields, chasing butterflies, turning back to bark, "Come on, Pilo, keep up." In the dream, Pilo laughed, his round belly bouncing as he tried to run faster. But every time, just before he could reach Max, the dream dissolved into darkness, and Pilo woke alone. He would sit up, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, and look at the empty space beside him. The porch boards creaked, but there was no warm body pressed against him, no steady breathing to lull him back to sleep. Despite the emptiness, Pilo never stopped waiting. Every evening, he returned to the porch, sitting still and watching the horizon. His ears twitched at every sound, his eyes scanned every shadow. Sometimes a neighbor's dog barked in the distance, and Pilo's heart leapt, only to sink again when he realized it wasn't Max. The house, the yard, the nights, they all felt hollow without his best friend. But deep down, Pilo held on to something fragile and small, the hope that maybe, somehow, Max was still close. Maybe in the wind that rustled the grass. Maybe in the stars that shone a little brighter on quiet nights. Sparkles, and so, Pilo's days of searching began. Each moment was heavy with longing, each night filled with dreams of the friend who was gone. The silence hurt, but the memories glowed gently in his heart, keeping him company in the darkness. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into quiet months. The sharp ache of Max's absence began to soften, not because Pilo forgot, but because the memories of his best friend began to glow warmly inside his heart. At first, every little thing reminded Pilo of Max. The squeak of the toy bone. The empty space by the fruit bowls. The fence where they used to sit together. Each memory pricked at Pilo's heart like a thorn. But over time, those same memories began to feel less painful and more comforting, like little lanterns lighting his path through the dark. One golden afternoon, as the sun spilled across the porch, Pilo lay stretched out in his usual spot. He blinked slowly at the yard, remembering the way Max would dash across it, barking joyfully at butterflies and squirrels. For the first time in a long while, Pilo's whiskers curved into a soft smile. He spoke aloud, his voice quiet but steady. "Do you see them, Max? The butterflies? They're still here. I think they miss you too." The wind rustled through the grass, brushing gently against Pilo's fur. He closed his eyes, imagining it was Max's tail wagging beside him. Little by little, Pilo found ways to carry Max with him. Whenever he saw a butterfly, he gave it a slow blink, as if sending a greeting from one friend to another. Whenever thunder rolled through the sky, Pilo purred louder, remembering the night he comforted Max during the storm. And whenever he found one of Max's old toys, instead of crying, he curled around it, as though guarding the piece of his friend that remained. The house was quieter now, but not empty. It was filled with echoes of laughter, paw prints of memory, and the invisible thread of love that no accident could ever break. One evening, as the stars blinked above, Pilo climbed to his favorite spot on the porch. He looked at the horizon where he and Max had sat so many times before. For the first time, he didn't feel the sharp sting of waiting. Instead, he felt a calm warmth, like Max was already there, sitting quietly beside him in the night. "You were right, Max," Pilo whispered. "There really is something beyond the fence. It's you. You're out there somewhere. And in here, too." He pressed a paw gently to his chest. "Always." The crickets sang, the wind carried the scent of flowers, and Pilo began to purr. It wasn't the broken purr of sorrow anymore, but a deep, steady hum of peace. From then on, Pilo's days were different, but not empty. He still waddled around the yard, still took long naps in the sun, still gave unimpressed looks to butterflies he could never quite catch. But now, every little thing carried Max's presence. When neighbors passed by, they sometimes smiled and said, "That chubby orange cat always looks like he's guarding something precious." And in a way, he was. He was guarding the bond he shared with Max, the friendship that had filled his days with laughter, comfort, and love. As seasons changed, Pilo grew older. His steps slowed, his naps grew longer, but his heart remained light. On quiet nights, he still dreamed of Max. Sometimes they raced again, Max flying ahead, Pilo waddling behind. Sometimes they curled up together on the porch under the stars. And sometimes, Max turned back in the dream, his tail wagging, his eyes bright. "Come on, Pilo," Max would bark softly. "I'm still here. I've never really left." And when Pilo woke, he carried that dream in his heart like a treasure. In the end, Pilo realized something gentle and true: love doesn't disappear when a friend is gone. It lingers in every memory, every dream, every small joy that reminds you of the bond you shared. And so, though Max had gone, he was never truly lost. Because as long as Pilo purred in the sun, blinked at the butterflies, and curled up on the porch each night, Max's spirit lived on, bright, loyal, and eternal. And so, dear listener, the story of Pilo and Max reminds us that even when someone we love leaves, their light stays with us forever. Friendship doesn't end with goodbye. It lives on in our hearts, in our memories, and in the gentle warmth of love that never fades. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks slipped gently into months. The little town still carried the familiar hum of everyday life, yet for Pilo, each sunrise brought with it a quiet reminder that his best friend Max was no longer beside him. At first, Pilo would wake up each morning expecting Max to nudge him with his wet nose, or to hear the thumping sound of Max's tail wagging against the wooden floor. But instead, he was met with silence. The empty space in the room felt vast, like a missing piece in a puzzle that could never be found again. Yet, something magical began to unfold as time passed. Whenever Pilo curled up in his favorite sunspot, he would sometimes feel a sudden warmth, as if someone invisible had settled beside him. And when he closed his eyes, he could almost hear Max's goofy laugh, the sound of his bark mixed with joy, as if echoing through the walls of his heart. One evening, as the golden sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and purples, Pilo sat by the window. He gazed out at the garden where he and Max used to play. The wind carried a gentle rustle, bending the tall grass and stirring the flowers. For a moment, Pilo's ears perked up. He could almost imagine Max dashing across the yard, chasing butterflies with that silly grin plastered across his face. Pilo chuckled softly to himself. "You would still miss every butterfly, Max," he whispered, his whiskers twitching. "But I'd still cheer you on." That night, Pilo had a dream. In it, the meadow stretched endlessly, bathed in the glow of soft starlight. There, Max stood, wagging his tail so fast it looked like a blur. His eyes sparkled with love, and his bark echoed through the dreamscape like a song of comfort. Pilo ran to him, and though they could not quite touch, Pilo felt the joy of their bond vibrating in his very soul. Max didn't speak in words, but somehow Pilo understood. The message was simple: "I'm always with you, no matter where you are." When Pilo woke up the next morning, he felt different. The sadness was still there, it always would be, but it no longer weighed him down like before. Instead, he carried Max's memory like a gentle lantern, glowing softly inside him. He realized something important: true friendship doesn't end with goodbye. It lives on in every shared laugh, every silly adventure, and every moment of love. Max might not be walking beside him anymore, but he would forever walk with him in spirit. From then on, whenever Pilo played with the other neighborhood pets, he wasn't lonely. He told them stories about Max, the brave dog who chased butterflies, barked at clouds, and was the best pillow a cat could ever ask for. The other animals would laugh, shake their heads, and say, "Max sounds like he was one of a kind." And Pilo would smile, his round belly jiggling as he purred. Yes, he was. And he always will be. That night, as Pilo curled up in his cozy bed, the stars twinkled brightly above the little house. He purred softly, his heart calm. Somewhere beyond the stars, Max was wagging his tail, watching over him. And deep inside, Pilo knew, love never truly leaves. It just changes shape, sometimes into a memory, sometimes into a dream, and sometimes into the quiet warmth that lingers when the world feels cold. So, under the blanket of night, with his eyes slowly closing, Pilo whispered one last goodnight. "Good night, Max, see you in my dreams." And with that, the orange, chubby, and oh so lovable cat drifted off into a peaceful sleep, his dreams filled with laughter, love, and the eternal bond of a friendship that even time could not break. Ending note, bedtime tone. And so, dear listener, remember this: Even when someone we love is no longer by our side, their love stays with us forever, lighting our way, just like Max did for Pilo. And so, children, as Pilo drifted into sleep, he knew Max would always be with him, in every memory, in every dream, and deep inside his heart. Remember, even when someone we love is no longer by our side, their love never fades away. It stays with us, warm and bright, like a star that guides us through the night. So now, it's your turn to close your eyes. May your dreams be filled with love, laughter, and the joy of friendship, just like Pilo and Max. Good night, little one. Sleep tight, and dream sweet dreams.